guys. Welcome to this week's episode of Next to Nunn Podcast. I'm super excited today. It's going to be a little bit different. It feels a little bit weird for me, if I'm being perfectly honest, because I am not interviewing anyone today. I'm interviewing myself in some ways. And I just want to kind of talk a little bit about, pull back the curtain and share my heart behind my business, why I do it, who I do it for, and what it's really about. So let's just go ahead and just dive into it, and we're just going to go for it. So I started my business. I was in a 23-year career, and I loved that career. I got so much fulfillment out of it. However, there was just some things that I wasn't aligning for me anymore. And so after leaving that organization, I started my business. I knew very clearly some things. And my former profession was I was a pastor on staff at a large church. And prior to that, I worked in churches my entire career in ministry. And I learned a lot through that process. I did a lot of leadership development, and I really fell in love with it because I saw that when you lead people well, they thrive. And so it was really important for me when starting a business that's part of what my business is. So, I left there. I wrote my first book. It's called Dirty Lenses, A Practical Guide to Clarify Your Vision. You can find it on Amazon. I loved the process of writing. It was healing. It opened up so many, windows into my own self. It was so much fun. And then I was doing my certification for leadership coaching, and I had just finished it when I transitioned off staff. And I was doing some coaching while I was working, but I really wanted that to be part of what I do in the future. And so I started my business, and I started it, and I probably within the first 2 years, I really took some time to really hone in things. And I feel like I've really landed where I'm supposed to be in that space of my business. So something that was pretty telling for me in leadership is that over the years, I've had really bad leaders and I've had some great leaders. And I remember probably the biggest story that stands out. I was working with a pastor on staff at a church, and they just, I know it's going to be kind of an oxymoron, but they just weren't very nice. And they were a little egotistical and self-absorbed in some ways, and it really bothered me. And it went to who was my direct report at the time, and I talked to them, and I was just like, listen, I don't want to work with that person anymore. I don't feel like they have the heart and all this other stuff. And I said all these things, and they were like, okay, well, I'm going to challenge you to something, Amy. This is what he said to me. I'm going to challenge you to something. And I was like, okay. And he challenged me to pray and to see that person through God's eyes instead of my own. And to me, that was a game changer because it changed my perspective greatly about people. I no longer looked at people for what they showed me, but I tried to look at people for who God had made them to be. And that was a huge shift for me. I don't know. I know very few leaders that really try to take a moment and really understand the people that they have working around them and for them. And a lot of the leadership that I saw was very laser focused on the mission and not on helping the people. So the big gap that I saw in leadership development and team culture was a lack of alignment. I saw leadership that thought they were clear, but they weren't clear. I'm a huge believer in you just keep repeating your culture, because the more you do it, the more it becomes a part of you. It's just like the things that you have with your kids, right? As parents, the more you say something, the more they're going to hear it. Maybe not all kids. Let's just, let's just say that. But the more, every family kind of has a culture of its own, right? In your home, some things are just a little bit different for you in your home with your family than somebody else's home. There's different rules, there's different expectations and all those things. And what I see often is that businesses' expectations don't always align with the culture if they have a healthy culture. You know, one of the things that I see is a lack of core values. And if there are core values, are you talking about them? Or are they just your core values? And they hear about it when they are onboarded into the organization, but beyond that, nothing else ever happens with it. In my last role, when I was working for someone else, I obviously was in a church and I had about 250 volunteers that were directly underneath me. And what I learned very quickly is that, and I learned from bad leadership of myself. I was a bad leader. I didn't understand totally pieces of leading that many people all at one time. And so as I read books, listened to podcasts, had a coach, I started to learn and shift how I was supposed to lead that many people and what was important about that. And I remember having this little offsite at my house, and I started creating structure of leadership for my teams. And when they came, I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. And I had another lady that was kind of my number two at the time, and we were bouncing ideas off each other. So we did this exercise where we took these sticky notes, and I said, write one word that you think describes our teams. And so they started putting all these things up there, and I was like, awesome. Write one word that you want those teams to look like. And so they started putting all those things up there. Why did I include them in that? Well, because it was their teams. It was my team too, but it was also theirs as leaders. And so I said, okay, now I want you to craft a statement that embodies what you guys have written up there. And so I just sat back, and they start working together to put all these things together. And they're like, Amy, what do you think? And I'm like, I have no opinion on that, because it really needed to be something that came from them, because the team and the leadership of the team. So yes, I was their leader, but they were also leaders of people, and they were leaders of leaders. And so in order for them to be able to pass this down and it become the culture of those teams, it needed to be believed by the people that were in that room. And they needed to be excited about it. They needed to become owners in it. And so they came up with this beautiful statement, and then they started passing it down, and we started implementing it within the team. Why was that important? Because owners, and remember, these are volunteer people. These were 250 volunteers. When people become owners, even though they may not have, so let's talk about it in the context of a business. Even though they may not have stake in the shares of the company or whatever, but if they're given the opportunity to speak into something that was so pivotal for the organization as a whole, what do you think would happen to that individual in that organization? They're going to become loyal. They're going to be very clear on what their expectations are, where we're going as as a business. Like, all of those things are going to align. And that gap between the culture, the alignment, and what people are doing within the business seems to just collide in a way that is perfectly aligned and moving forward. So I'm saying all that to say is that, in businesses, there's patterns that start to happen. And that's one of the things that I get to do. I get to go into these businesses or nonprofit and help align the businesses to their culture, their core values, their mission. One of the churches that I worked at, there was a lot of talk about, yeah, we've got a great culture. We've got a great culture. And I finally asked a question one day. I said, what is our culture? And they looked at me like, what do you mean? And I'm like, what is our culture? We don't talk about core values. We don't talk about the mission. We don't go back and align things to those core values. So what is our culture? And it started this process of like, wow, we never thought about it that way. I heard the core values and the mission in the beginning, but there's this thing that's called drifting. The staff and your leaders can drift from your culture that maybe you intend in the beginning, you intentionally set some very clear ones, but they were never communicated. Expectations were never given. And so we go in and we do what I like to call a culture alignment or a culture audit. And I help the business see their blind spots. A lot of times leaders don't always see the blind spots. And then also if they're leading from a place of they don't know how to align because they haven't gotten that information down from their leader. And so we do interviews with everybody, not all the staff, but key staff people, leadership within the organization, whether it's the executive team, whether it's the middle management. We do interviews. We find where the holes are, and then we sit down and we give you a plan. Like, this is how it can be fixed. Here's the process to fix it. And here's what we're going to do. And what do you think? Asking, what do you think? Sometimes it's leaders that just don't know how to lead in the environment they're in. Sometimes it's not understanding one another. I'm a certified practitioner with Everything DISC, and sometimes you got to understand yourself, your personality tendencies, and you have to understand other people as well. And sometimes that is not the driving performance aspect is just drive, drive, drive. And so some of these things end up laying by the wayside because there's such a drive to push things forward. And so, what I love is that, CEOs, executives can walk along with their middle management or whatever the structure is in your organization. And you don't have to be in front of them. You can walk alongside them. Like I pulled leaders with me and said, hey, let's just work together today. And, I want you to see what the day looks like. And I want your input into things. And so throughout the day, somebody would come and ask me a question. Yeah. What do you think about that? I'd ask the person, what do you think about that? And let them speak into it. And a lot of times they had watched enough that they knew. And, we're not about quick fixes. We're here to help leaders build something sustainable. And we do that through clarity, and we do that through culture, and we do that through leadership. And those are really important pieces in an organization, because I can guarantee you, if those things, if there's not clarity or alignment, and there's not solid, healthy leadership, you're probably going to see a chaotic environment that can't stay aligned. It's floating here and there, and all of those different types of things. So, I love working with businesses on these types of things because, again, leadership is such a pivotal thing for people. And you know what? It can be in your home as a mom or a dad, or it can be if you're single or you live with your spouse and you don't have kids, you guys are still leading each other in different ways. And, it's just pivotal to do it in the right way. Your business may not need a complete overhaul, but sometimes it's great to have someone come in and check and make sure that things are aligned to the original vision. Or if it's not, what are you needing to shift in order to have the vision really stay in line with what you wanted that business to be? Vision drifts. It just drifts. And sometimes it's hard. And so core values are pivotal. Your mission statement's pivotal. Developing your teams. You want high performing teams, then you need to develop your people. And when I say develop your people, I don't mean, hey, I'm going to send you to a conference. Those are great too. Those are really great, but they're not going to learn culture at a conference. How many leaders do you have in your business that are not developing their staff? What does that look like? What if you could have a development program within your business that is developing your staff? Because I can guarantee, because I've seen it and I've seen the numbers going into a business, and I can tell you if they have cultural issues, retention issues, leadership issues, there's a gamut there, right? And it all goes back to alignment to your culture, putting people in the right places in your business when you hire them, And maybe you have an employee that's not doing good in a certain area, but they are just loyal and they have a great heart and they do really good work, but they're not good in that role. What's another role that you could put them in the organization that's going to fit them and you're not going to lose that person that really is loyal to your business? Culture matters, leadership matters, and clarity matters. And I would love to have a conversation. If somebody's watching this and they're like, hey, I would love to have you come in and just have a conversation with me. I'm working with businesses, executive teams. I'm working with sales managers, just helping them with communication, doing some trainings with some staff, doing the assessments with staff to help them understand their personality tendencies and how they can become healthy versions of that, and also utilize the strengths that are within their personality tendencies, and then be self-aware of the ones that are hurting them. I would love to have a conversation with you. Even if maybe you don't feel like your business is hurting. Sometimes it's underlying and you don't know because it never makes it up to the top. And I would really highly encourage you. I heard this from a CE one time that I met with. They meet with anybody and everybody in their organization. This CEO was running a $50 million company, and he intentionally met with the janitor once a year. He met with like all of these different people. And that was important because you keep your pulse on the culture and you keep your pulse on the business, because there's going to be things that people are going to be afraid to tell you. And by doing that, it opens you up to being aware as a leader and not just expecting other people to come and tell you when your business is not aligning. Because you're going to start seeing it in your sales. You're going to start seeing it in the retention of your employees, and you're going to see it in the faces of the people as they walk around your business. So saying all that to say, first of all, if you're someone and you'd like to be interviewed for this podcast, I would love to have a conversation with you. We should meet, whether it's via Zoom or in person in the St. Louis area. I would love to connect with you. Secondly, if you're a business and some of the things that I said resonated with you, I would love to sit down with you and see how we can help. Sometimes it's just you need someone that just can listen, and sometimes it's more than that. Sometimes you need help, and it's not always easy to ask for help. It's not always easy to ask for help, but we would love to come in and help you. And whether it's with training, maybe we do the DISC assessment. I'm also a certified facilitator with The Working Genius by Patrick Lencioni. Shout out to Patrick Lencioni. He is my favorite leadership author. I love how he writes. If you haven't read any of his books, he's written The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. He's also written the book, The Working Genius. So check those out. Those are great books to read. All kinds of books. I'm a reader. I love to read. I'm a lifelong learner. But anyway, thanks so much for listening to me today. I really appreciate it. And I hope that there was some nuggets in there for you. I know, I've learned a lot by listening to others. I do tell people you can learn so much in every conversation that you have with every single person that you meet. I hope you have a great rest of your day.